Welcome to our 35th podcast and our second guest. Today we'll be talking about converting change doubters to allies with our second guest, Russ Lange, a co-founding partner of CMG. CMG is a strategic consulting firm that partners with enterprise leaders to enable their potential to transform, grow, and thrive. What's one thing you can do now to convert change doubters to allies? Keep listening to find out. Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces. Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. As always, we're glad to have you with us today. I'm Rich Cruz, joined by my colleagues Cheryl Volpe.
Hi,
Cheryl.
Rich. Hi, everyone.
And Ben Kleinman.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are joined and so thrilled to have our second guest, Russ Lange from CMG. Hi, Russ. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you all are well.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ, for being here. Super cool.
Thanks, Blaine,
Glad
for
to
being
have
here.
you, Russ.
So, Russ, we're going to be talking today about converting change doubters to allies. And before we dig in, can you just give us just a brief bio and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Thank you. So, a little bit about myself. I started out life in the technology space. I was actually an engineer working in machine vision and DNA sequencing in the early stages. Never thought I would be involved many decades later in the work of helping organizations and people transform, grow, and thrive. It went from my focus of digital ones and zeros in a world of pretty much black and white to a world of Technicolor with the joys of seeing people understand what their potential is and how to realize it. And that's what we've been working on. But it's all in the service of helping our clients, our enterprise clients, grow their top line revenue. So we work with organizations to focus on what more they can do to accelerate their revenue growth and the profits that come with that. Started working in the 90s in the telecommunications space as that was going through rapid deregulation. Monopolies were becoming competitive, so we worked around the world with large phone companies like British Telecom and others, helping them figure out how to compete and win by serving their customers better. We moved into a number of industries, including technology and industrials, and over the last 15 years, really spending a lot of time in the healthcare space, helping health systems and medical device companies support their patients better, support their providers better. So a wide range of experiences, but all based upon that concept of helping people and organizations transform, grow, and thrive.
And I'm sure throughout that time, there's been a lot of change, not only from the outside forces, but inside of each of these companies.
Yeah. When we started, just to give a sense, a tangible sense of where we were when we started, we were working on two projects. One, the sale of a new analog wireless phone that could actually go with you as you traveled from the United States to Europe and Asia and work all the time. It was only the size of literally a brick. And of course, now we have the world in our pocket. And the other project that we started working on when we formed was this thing called a .com address. We were working with the original provider of .coms, trying to convince businesses that they needed to be online, whatever that meant, and getting people to register their domain names. And now, of course, it's everywhere. So there's been a little bit of change in the world that we all live in.
Oh my goodness. So many questions, Russ. So many questions. Okay. First question, most important. Was the phone that was the size of a brick, could you get it in a shoe?
It would definitely fit within a shoe.
Okay.
And you might be smart if you were using it at that point.
Okay. That's an old fogey joke. Sorry about that.
That was a nice tie into smart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, though, Russ, I'm wondering. So two more serious questions. One, what was it like for you going through this transition or change, going from that world of gray, the zeros and ones that you talked about, to a more technicolor world dealing with behaviors and emotions and feelings and not necessarily rational behavior? As someone who's sort of seen both sides, how did you decide to go on that journey? How did you get yourself through that journey? Tell me more about that.
So two-part answer. I'll start with the second one. How did I get there? And then I'll come back to what facilitated the journey. How I got there, always curious. And I'm blessed with having a healthy dose of curiosity. And as a kid, I was always curious about how you could grow things. So classic kid, lawnmower service, newspaper delivery. You remember those newspapers that would actually be thrown on the front porch? That's also how much change delivered manually in the analog fashion. But always looked at and loved growing things. But I also like tinkering. So I took the path of being an engineer over growing businesses.
Okay.
And then over time got to get out of the lab and get into business. But the thing that enabled me to do all of that was a common language called data and evidence. As an engineer and in DNA sequencing and other work that we did, it was always about capturing data and analyzing it to make judgment calls. What's the gene sequence? What's whatever it is? The same thing in the work that we do and the work that we started doing in the 90s. How can we collect data, analyze it, make a hypothesis, and act on it? The hypothesis just changed. Instead of the DNA that formed a person, we talked about in the telecom space, what was that person doing? What could we do with the data that would delight people? And how do you differentiate a dial tone? You've got to differentiate a dial tone with something that matters to people. Why would they want to dial tone from provider XYZ to provider ABC? And so we quickly made it about the emotion. If you utilize, we were developing something called Friends and Family. If you utilized data to show people how they could connect to friends and family and spend less money, it meant something. But in order to make that happen, the machinery was all data. In order to convince business people to invest in all the assets and the resources and the marketing campaigns and all that, you had to have data. So data was the currency. It's just different applications.
Got it.
And
That's fascinating.
Using that data to present a reward as friends and family, we often talk about rewards and incentive and motivation. And that was just a genius insight on your part and your partners to see that our customers don't necessarily want to understand or even see the data, but if that data can bring them delight was the word that you used, and that was the motivation and the incentive. It's just great.
And the same plays out when we talk about enabling change within organizations, right?
Yes.
Become change doubters. What's the data? What's the risk? What's the emotional triggers that people need to be able to be at least non-blockers of change?
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's something in there about using that data to help kind of find those people who might be doubters, or help those doubters become less skeptical, or help people who are on the bubble shift over into being a little bit more allies. And so maybe we could dig into that a little bit more. I'm curious if that was how you got clients to use and start embracing that .com online presence, because that was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. And taking this leap of faith into an unknown world, was it bringing them some kind of data that showed, I mean, there weren't really a lot of outcomes you could show, but was it something like, this is the promise, this is the new green space, this is, you know, how did you convince some of those companies to start taking a leap?
In the beginning days, when it was a rare thing to have an address, it was about cultivating join the movement. So certainly you use numbers. 6 months ago, we had 500,000 businesses online. Now we have 1 million businesses online. Don't you want to be part of the movement?
Okay.
Here's the things that can be accomplished. And definitely the data and the rate of progress, the rate of change.
Early FOMO, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking that, that you have all these people that they're seeing this wave of joiners, and they get on the bus because they want to be part of something, not necessarily because they were doubters. They maybe just hadn't heard about it, or they were sort of equivocating.
And at the time, you could counteract it with also, what's the risk? Definitely you had the risk of missing out, but if you did it, maybe more people could find you, and maybe more people could be engaged in what you were interested in or what you were trying to do. So prompting that a little bit of change could give a lot of reward.
Right.
That makes sense. Well, in my experience, even with all this data, and you give people data, there still are some people who are like, I know better. This is the way that things. Have you encountered that where, those change doubters, you've presented the data, you've attempted to, change their mindset, but they're still kind of either stuck in their ways, or they still remain doubtful. How have you overcome that?
So that's where the real opportunity sits, because now you're starting to you have to start understanding what's driving the individual and the teams, because it's not always one person, maybe a group. So for example, if we're working with a client and they're evaluating a new pricing scheme, sales may not want to adopt the new pricing scheme. So you've got to start working, no matter what the data looks like, about how much more profit and revenue can generate the company. It may still affect the salespeople because they're thinking, yes, but it's going to be harder to do our jobs. We'll have to, and it may be riskier. It may affect our compensation. So start deconstructing what's this sphere of influence and impact on these recommendations or these actions, and what would it take to, in essence, de-risk these actions and these decisions with individuals? Every situation is going to vary, but for those advocating change, we've got to do the work to understand where others are coming from. Is it the right time for the organization, but not the right time for the individual or team, or the right situation? So how have you all, put the question back to you, how have you all explored, what's behind the no? Why do folks say no, or not yet, or just don't engage and put the black ball out there?
Well, maybe what we should do, let's take a quick break because I think that's a great question for us to discuss is what have we done to handle that no situation. So we will be right back. At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So we have been talking with Russ Lange here from CMG, talking about converting change doubters to embracing change, right? And Russ had posed the question to us: how have we encountered, when we've encountered the resistance to change, right? How have we handled that in the past? So, if you don't mind me jumping into that one for a second.
No, go for it.
Not at all.
One of the things that I've come up against is just kind of in a way, it's the fear of incompetence. Like, I'm not competent enough to do this. So I've had that from people who are like, I'm not tech savvy when it's a tech transformation, or your method of trying to sell, and price in this particular way, as Russ was, mentioned before the break. I'm not confident in my ability to do that. So what I found is when there's some degree of training that can increase self-efficacy on that, it does help. But I think before that, you've got to acknowledge their feelings, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say, in more general terms, we talk a lot, Russ, about the culture of an environment, and a change culture, a learning culture, a training culture, all of those things. The way a company is when you first experience it sort of puts you on the map, right, of how difficult it will be to introduce that change. And when the culture has a clearly defined values and purpose statement or mission statement, and everyone who is there understands that, or a thorough onboarding process, and that culture is open to the idea of change, that does make it easier. It's not a specific answer to the question that you asked, but we do talk a lot about how the culture can make that harder or easier, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Just to round it out, I found that in many cases, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of digging. It's a lot of individual conversations or sort of side conversations to understand why someone is pushing back or dragging their feet. What's the concern? And I found that if you approach it in a sort of spirit of discovery, Russ, you said earlier that you were always curious and always looking to learn. And I think if you come at it with a little bit of a not the village idiot mindset, but a little bit of the, hey, I'm just super curious. We think this was a good idea. We thought we had kind of figured out a way we could serve our customers better. What did we miss here? Where did I go wrong? And that allows a little bit of space for people to say, well, the idea is good. We all want to serve our customers better or help our patients or what have you, but here's why this is challenging for me or my team. And, sometimes it's a little bit of that. And sometimes it's just a little bit of asking the people around, if it's one person or one team, asking the people around that, because sometimes those folks are not willing to say, yeah, this change is going to mean that I'm going to lose power or lose agency or lose credibility in the eyes of the senior leadership team, or I'm going to lose a chance for promotion. And you sort of have to back channel into those kinds of conversations. And then you have to try to figure out ways to help that person realize it's not necessarily a demotion, or it's not necessarily some kind of a bad thing, but there's just a different journey they're going to have to go on. So those can be a little bit harder. And if you don't have buy-in from other people in that periphery or buy-in from leadership, then it's very hard. You need a lot of peer pressure.
And that's a lot of work because it requires a moment of vulnerability too, right? Where, especially if we're talking about, like you were talking about, Rich, the imposter syndrome, the sense of incompetence, fear of losing power, all of those honest answers take a moment of vulnerability, which people are often cloaked against, right?
I think those are all very real experiences and situations, and very strong contributors to all the scar tissue that we've developed over the years in supporting organizations. And one of the things with my firm CMG that we've done is over the first 15 years or so, we're 26 years old now. For the first 15 years, a lot of our work was with clients bringing new things into the marketplace, where there's very clear objectives, usually somewhat of a new organization to bring that thing into the market. Even if it's part of an established company, it was a new mission, clear goals, and not so much organizational friction against change, because it's new thing formed to go get something. As we grew and matured and worked with a variety of clients, more and more of our work became, hey, help us optimize what we have today. Our productivity of revenue and profits have started falling off. We need to improve, optimize, maybe transform, maybe evolve what we're doing. There you have much more embedded, as you're all talking about, resistance culture to change. You have risk aversion. Hey, we know what we're doing today, and none of us are marked down for carrying on that inertia. We're marked down for changing and maybe not improving. The risk tolerance starts playing in much more significantly in the we need to change what we're doing today.
Interesting.
And that tolerance, we started exploring with a number of executive leaders what's behind those blockers of change, and how do you start breaking through the blockers, and also how do you just start dealing with all the amount of change that organizations are going through, that we're all going through, without becoming totally exhausted and impotent from being able to have more positive impact on the business performance and the individual's performance. The walkabouts that you talk about are great, going around and getting temperature checks and having the individual conversations work. The problem is that takes time. It's hard to scale. It's hard to be systematic. And it also requires us to interpret a lot of different perspectives. And so we start looking and saying, we're seeing a number of symptoms. One, change exhaustion. One, more and more aversion to change, the risk of change, the doubting of change. But the need for change has never been greater for all the things that you can think about, whether it's Gen AI, hybrid work, you name it, people, technology, marketplaces, everything else. The change is needed. So how do we help organizations change in a better way, faster. And we went back to the evidence collection again. And this time we thought, rather than having the individual conversations and the level of investment and effort of time, money, energy to gather those, what if we could very quickly in 15 minutes collect people's sentiment, perceptions of how good their organization is at setting strategy to achieve a goal. In our work, that goal is always customer denominated, revenue, profit, market growth. How good is an organization at the work needed to set a strategy, to execute that strategy, and change in ways that are needed to support that strategy? And we codified those strengths that are needed to set strategy, execute, and change into 35 questions. It takes 15 minutes in a survey to collect data. And we simply put something together called Thrive Number, that survey in the process, to ask leadership teams and the direct reports simple questions on how well they perceive their organization's ability to set strategy, execute, and change. In that way, we get a body of data that we can start sharing as evidence with leaders and their direct reports of what their perceptions of their strengths of their organization are, what their direct reports' perceptions are, how they compare, how they contrast. So we have data and now evidence that we can start helping people align. Rich, as you're putting out, there's not just one imposter in any organization. It's full of people, therefore full of imposters. And when we can show people, hey, there's some people who have doubt about the ability to execute a strategy, and so therefore that might be something behind why people say no. Or others may have doubts about how their organization can set strategy, that maybe they're not setting the strategy to solve the problem or to capture the opportunity they think.
Sure.
And also, they have doubt about, I'm ready to change, but my organization isn't. So therefore, we're not ready. So when you put all this data together in some very easy to access, very easy to consume visuals, graphics, we can bring, as one of our clients said, one of our client CEOs said, you bring my daily pain to life because I get to see now the misalignment between my leaders, between my teams. And this explains so much. So in a very quick way, low overhead, we can start explaining why there's doubt about the propensity to change and the benefits to change.
It's fantastic. Can you explain a little bit more about the scale? What does the data look like when you get it back?
So we've evolved how we evaluate the data and we visualize it for folks. We found out when we first were pursuing this tool, this visualization, we put words against scale instead of scales. We put words. Well, you're a strategic organization or you're a transactional organization or whatever. And what we found is people like to argue about brands like transactional or strategic, and not understand the data behind it. So we collapsed it to your question. We collapsed it down to a simple scale of 0 to 100. A Thrive number of 100 means you have 35 strengths, all 35 strengths required to set strategy and execute and change. 0 means at that point in time you have none. And anywhere in between, you can fall. And whatever the number is, it's not a negative. If you have, whether you have a 10 or a 90, It's just where you are now. The question is, what are you going to do with the strengths that you all have revealed and agree you have? And what are you going to do about the strengths that you don't
Sure.
have?
It's kind of like the Myers-Briggs for an organization, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
No
A Myers-Briggs, a strength finders for a corporation. What are we going to do? And so you're changing the dynamic of that question of why won't we change, or why won't people get on board with change, from a individual centric question or challenge to, hey, here's where we are as an organization. What do we want to do about it? It's looking at that DNA sequence way back when, or the MRI that says, here's a Technicolor version of our organization. What do we want to do about it? It's public. We're not shaming. It's all confidential. So, like, the difference between a Myers-Briggs is it's very much individual. People wear the I am a INTJ.
Badge.
I'm an introvert.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You wear the badge, I am it, and some people celebrate and all that. Thrive number, it's a group number. So it's a 1 to, at the highest level, it's a number. But below that, it's a visualization of these 35 strengths. Where are we as an organization at MAPS? Go ahead.
Russ, I was just going to ask if there's a way that you can use the Thrive number or the concept of this data assessment mechanism to help you find those pockets of doubt or pockets of resistance, and then that surfaces where leadership can go to target and does it also help them understand then how maybe to target, like your example before about this, a sales team maybe is not on board because it might change the way they have to work or change their commission structure. So is there a way to use that Thrive number to help narrow your focus? So like, instead of where I was talking about doing all these ones and onesie twosies, you now have a very data driven, go to this group, help them understand X.
That's exactly right. It gives, whether you want to call it a heat map, a contextual map, or so on. Again, all confidential, no names, but certainly groups. So what it does is allows us to start prioritizing and sequencing. Where do we have pools of strength, pools of opportunity to really leverage, and where do we have some mixture that we need your all's help to work through? For example, when you have the way we use this information is we make it public. So you have the Thrive number, you have the visualizations of alignment, misalignment across the strengths. And we bring leadership teams together and say, here's where we are. Here's the range. Within this room, we have people who believe we have a Thrive number of 5, meaning the potential to realize our objectives, all the way up to 95. What does it mean? So we get to talk about each other. But once we get through that workshop and we have some understanding and some alignment of a commitment to align and act and achieve our goals, you then need to do all the hard work that you're talking about. Okay, we just went through a workshop where the CFO, we know, has a Thrive number of 7. Their perception is, we really don't have strengths to set our objectives. The CEO sitting next to the CFO has a Thrive number perception of 78. We're in good shape. Okay, how do these two folks now start working together? Or the head of analytics and aligning and saying what needs to become true here so that we both have a greater clarity of the strengths of this organization and how we can lead it. Or the head of analytics has a 75 for how great they are at insights, and their head of revenue has 30 as the strength of insights. Somebody's thinking they're delivering great value to their peer. Somebody else is saying, I've got nothing. So how do you foster, the opportunity here is fostering those conversations without getting into the weeds of finger pointing or so on.
Yeah,
it's more, this is our common objective. as an organization, we don't think we're using data effectively, or we don't think we have a strategy, or our organization isn't ready. We had a client take Thrive Number, and when we had this workshop, we presented the findings, and when it came to one of the success drivers, organizational readiness, all about the people, right? They thought, the leadership team thought their organizational readiness existed. They were ready. 3 of the 5 strengths needed, they had. All good. We then put up the readout of their direct reports, the directors, the VPs responsible for delivering results, and what their perception of the organizational readiness was. 0 strengths. We just put the slide up and didn't say anything. We didn't have to.
You didn't have to say anything.
One of the leaders, after about 3 minutes of uncomfortable silence, simply said, "Damn." And that opened up a lot of conversation and a lot of follow-on action of, okay, I had doubts, but the evidence says we have to change because the people we're relying on don't believe we're ready to actually execute the strategy that we set.
I got a question, kind of real. So throughout our discussion today, you've tied revenue into what your company does. Yeah. How your company affects businesses or organizations. How do you tie this Thrive number into revenue? And I guess kind of related to that is when you have a company that may have lukewarm is not the right term, but a somewhat acceptable but may not be ideal Thrive number. Are they inclined to be more comfortable in staying in that status quo? Is that fair to ask?
Yeah. So one of the things, organizations, we all know organizations should be changing, improving, continuously improving. The world requires all of us to improve. We may not want to, we may not choose to, but we need to improve. So Thrive number is not meant to be a static, identify it today and stay with it forever. It's not the Myers-Briggs where we may always stay at INTJ or whatever, but rather we as an organization think of it more as what happens when you go to the gym and you're actually working to achieve better health, better physical strength, mental strength, and all that. You're going to be able to do a better repetition of your strength training, of your steps per day, of your run rate. And you're going to be measuring those things. Thrive number is every 6 months, every year, go back, refresh. And when you're committing as an organization to acting to improve the use of your strengths and the strengths you have, you track along with that. And how's our revenue, profit, and market growth? Are they going in the same direction? If we're growing revenue, market growth better than we were before, and our Thrive number goes up, we're probably doing the right thing. We can't explicitly say these are linked, but a general feedback loop is, as you improve strengths, performance should improve. As performance improves, if you look back into the strengths, they should be getting stronger.
So you do a correlation.
A correlation, exactly. That's the shorthand, a correlation between.
And I imagine after 26 years, you have a series of case studies where you also have data tracking that effectiveness.
Yeah, but Yes, we do. But the important thing with approaches like this is recognizing you have to meet every organization and every individual where they are and where they want to and need to go. So those change doubters, if we're meeting them and we're seeing that in the data, we're seeing that in the body language, we're seeing that in the collaboration with others, we're seeing the feedback of the hallway conversations that you all participate in. Are they actually improving, moving forward? And if not, why not? And so on. So it's meant. All of this is meant to just bring visibility to it. More than anything else, just make things visible so people can choose to act and align.
Very good.
I love that transparency. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's do this. Let's just take another quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to wrap things up. And if we can just kind of, Russ, if you could think of, what's one really good takeaway we can give to the listeners today, and then we'll wrap up the show. How's that?
Sounds great.
Okay. We'll be right back. Dysfunctional organizational cultures and poorly managed transformations can devastate employee morale and motivation, leading to disengaged employees, poor work quality, and the loss of your best people. The impacts to your organization include high costs, low productivity, and wasted resources. At Harmonious Workplaces, our purpose is to help you build the best workplace possible. We are advisors applying proven organizational development and industrial organizational psychology methodologies to help you become your best organization. We are doers, using time-tested principles to help you execute organizational change initiatives smoothly and successfully. To discover how Harmonious Workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So we have been speaking with our special guest today, Russ Lange. And Russ, if you could put a kind of a tidy bow on our discussion today, talking about converting change doubters to people who embrace change. What's this one thing that you can share with us from your perspective?
For those of us who are helping either directly or indirectly the change doubters become at least change observers, if not change catalysts. I think it really comes down to that very simple question that we all know: why? Let's keep working at the why, whether it's via Thrive Number, where we get quantitative evidence or observational evidence, conversational evidence, qualitative evidence through those conversations that you all are having. Let's start digging into what's the why here. Why is somebody blocking? Is it because it's the right time for the organization, but the wrong time for that individual, or the wrong impact on their compensation or status, imposter, or whatever? If we can start getting a better technicolor version of answer to that why, then we can start helping folks act on that change blocker, and also help the change blocker potentially become a better version of themselves, a bigger hero. They may be a hero, seen as a hero, or very confident. What's possible if actually they enable bettering of everybody? So the short answer after that long response is let's get after the why.
I love it.
Makes
That's
a lot of
fantastic.
sense.
It's
And would you say that you've seen that? Just to clarify for me, eh, eh, Simon Sinek had the book, right?
Yeah.
Start with Why, and this has been something that's been discussed quite a bit, even on our show. But it really seems like you've had that concept back from the beginning of CMG. Is that right?
We have, because, in order to grow, and we were founded on growth, right? One way to think of CMG, to use an acronym that somebody has pulled, create more growth. And
yay! You did it,
And-
Russ.
I'm doing my acronym happy dance. Thank you,
heard,
Russ.
Yeah, I heard it was needed. But as you're driving to create more growth, the question is how. What's going to change in order to create more growth? So yes, we've been at it for a while, but also growth comes just like good fortune and luck from those who make it. I was thinking about this topic as I was driving to the office this morning, and reflecting back on a client that we worked with in Australia, a financial institution. The entity we were working with had been told they were being put up for sale. And the leader said, well, if we're going to be sold, let's be the best version we can be. So not a change blocker, a change enabler, a change leader, but within an organization that didn't want to change. So rather just sell. They started changing and saying, we're going to become better version of ourselves. We're going to work as a team. We're going to try new things, even if we're going to get sold. What happened? They got better. Leadership changed to the parent organization. And those folks were able to create evidence of becoming better, becoming change agents, actually helped the top line and the bottom line. They had proof, they had evidence. So when there was a new leader at the top, they said, we want not to sell, we want more of what's happening in this unit. And those folks went from being big fish, little pond, to big fish, huge pond, becoming leaders of the overall global enterprise. I give that because sometimes there's value to individuals just by saying not only why, but also what about.
Sure. Awesome.
And tell those stories as you get there.
Right.
Sorry.
I would like to add that we often talk about why from leadership, and how if the individuals understand more clearly the why for the change, it's just a different way of saying what you're saying. Create more growth, CMG says the why in itself right there. But the resistance that you were talking about and asking about why is that resistance there, we often talk about if the individual understands more about the why for the change, the resistance also can be diminished. So it's just that's my takeaway. It's sort of the flip side of the same thing.
Think about that leadership team that got exposed to their direct reports, believing their organization wasn't ready for the strategies they had set. As an organizational leadership team, why would you not act to address that? It's now public. You have that information.
Sure.
So why not fix it?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, Russ, thanks a million for joining us. I want to just give you a minute or so to tell the audience, like, how can they contact you, or how can they engage in your services?
So again, thank you all very much for this opportunity. I'm glad and flattered to be your second guest. Can't wait to see your 40th and then 50th and 100th podcast. But in order to, if you want to contact us at CMG, it's simply cmgconsulting.com/thrive number, THRIVE number. So thank you very much.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. I'm going to go get our Thrive number, Rich and Ben.
Right on.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a million for everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Russ, for all of your wisdom and sharing with us how we can move from
a masterclass in overcoming change, resistance, and
Absolutely.
helping people along the change curve.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Have a good afternoon, good morning, good day.
All right. Well, till we meet again, make change a friend. Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.